I was born in the town of Schulz, Vermont, down on the Lake Champlain course. It's just south of Shelburne. My father was in the World War I, and when he came home, he built a garage in Schulz, and we lived there in the little village, little burg right outside the village of Schulz. The house I was born in, my folks lived in when I was born, is now at the Shelburne Museum. So somebody said to me one day when I was a little kid, "I didn't know you were that old." And by the time I turned 4 years old, we had 4 children, my oldest brother and an older sister and me and my younger sister. And we lived in Schulz until 1926, I think it was. And from there we moved to Richmond, Vermont, because my father had been hired by the state of Vermont to help with the construction of the cement highway between Burlington, Vermont, and Montpelier. And that's where I went to first grade in the school that held grades 1 through 12. And the graded school was on the first floor, and I remember exactly the room I was in and what it was like. Then in 1930, the highway department finagled him into coming up this way to live to work out at the state garage because he was a mechanic. And so we moved up to a little burg called Putnamville. I have a lot more memories there because I lived there through all the rest of my school days, from second grade through 12. The school that we went to there was a one-room schoolhouse which held between 25 and 30 kids. Usually it was in the vicinity of 25 kids in all 8 grades. We had a wonderful place to live, in a house that had a woods area back of it. And I used to be, loved to be outdoors, loved to be doing the things that all the kids outdoors did. And I remember some of the things I did was I'd hike around the area where I lived because it was hills everywhere. And at one time, I was probably 9, 10 years old, I started digging up wildflowers out in the woods and bringing them in and putting them in our backyard. Many, many years later, I was invited to come into the house and see the property once again, and the lady said to me, "Are you the one that planted that wildflower garden?" I was shocked to think that it had been on the earth that long and it was still there. We had a good sledding place. We lived in the middle of a hill so that we'd go to the neighbors above us and get on our sleds and go all the way down to the back of the village, all the way down to almost to the river. Then I also did a lot of cross-country skiing in the areas around there. And I'm trying to think about the kids. One thing I did, I liked to play baseball, so I was chosen to be the outfielder when I got along about, 10, 11 years old, because the schoolyard wasn't big enough for a baseball diamond, because the fielders couldn't be there. So they sent me across the road from the school, and I was the outfielder across the road, and it was my job to let them know if there was a car coming either way, because our school sat right in the top of a hill. If you went out of the schoolyard, you went down right, you went downhill, left, you went downhill. So I was the watchman there. The schoolhouse it's been made into a home, but it still looks like my old schoolhouse. The schoolhouse is right on the top of the hill. It faces the road. There's a door on the left and the door on the right in the front. The boys had the left side, the girls had the right side. I distinctly remember the big windows all down the south side of the building. And small desks, little kids were there. The big desk in the back, that's where the big boys were. We had an old-fashioned organ. We had a blackboard right across the front of the room between the two doorways that went out. And the coat closets for the kids were, you come in the door and there was a coat rack hanging on both sides, one the girls' side and one the boys' side. If anybody wanted to go to the bathroom, they had to go out their door, turn left and go out the back of the schoolhouse and into the outhouse that was built right onto the school. It was divided down the middle. And the boys was on their side of the building, on the left-hand side, and the girls was on the right. And the little kids in the neighborhood, my youngest brother and sister, who were born, by the way, in Richmond, weren't in school, so they used to come up to the school to go to the bathroom because they liked it better than going indoors at home. And, we had a few, we had so many farms, we had a few places that were kind of slopey and had some area that I could ski in. And I would go down from my home in the morning, I'd go at about 7 o'clock, go down the road and cross the bridge and around the farmers' fields and ski all through that area over there and come back and be in school at 9 o'clock. But I couldn't get other kids to go with me. I miss the old, beautiful old post office. Every day I walked down State Street. It was the most wonderful building, and I miss that a lot. And I miss the stone sheds. I don't think that there's many people living in Vermont now that lived through the era of the stone sheds, how many they were, which they now call Stonecutters Way, but there were still more in the city. That there was on Berry Street where the new condos are. That was all stone shed. Across the Greenwich Street, up that way, there were stone sheds. And I knew a lot of the area, the families that lived along that area that were stonecutters. A lot of fine things came out of those stone sheds. It's an era that's gone by that, is. I had a lot of friends in high school that fathers were grinder cutters. Mm. The lane shops, I knew that well. Because when we came down, I lived 6 miles from high school, and when we came down to high school, if we got out right there at Vine Street, we'd cross that bridge. It was for autos. And we'd go over, and we'd go through the lane shops into the back of the high school.
Which is now the Main Street Middle School.
Yes, that's right. Where the city center is. It was a beautiful area, beautiful shops and stores. There was a children's shop, they call it, on the corner of East State and Main, that any woman could go in there and do her shopping because she had sizes of clothes that would fit older people. But it was really a children's shop. It was just anything and everything you wanted. And I bought my clothes there when I was grown up. I miss that very much so. That went down in a fire. Then there was a furniture store by the almost next door, up a little bit there, and Cross's Bakery was there. Yeah, and I worked at Cross Bakery for a short while, quite a while, at one time. And they had the front store, which was mostly candy store. Kids would come by and buy their candy. That block I've always missed. But the others are pretty much intact. When I was 8 years old, I was in the 4-H. I was in for 8 years, right into high school. I learned to cook and to sew. And when I was a freshman in high school, I was 14. I made, led up to it for the first of the year, up to a big project. And the project was to make a dress. So I went shopping, bought pure cotton cloth, because that's what you could get, a plaid, mind you, and the thread and the stuff I needed to go with it, and it all cost me $1.28. And I made the dress, and my teacher chose it as the one of the things to go to contest at UVM. We went there. She picked one from each class, and for some reason there wasn't any for in our home ec class. There wasn't any sophomore, but there was myself as freshman, a junior, and a senior. And I came home with the first prize for the dress. When my son wanted to be a page in legislature, I urged him to do it, but I told him, I cannot do it for you. You have to do it yourself. So he did, and he was accepted, but it was a scarcity, an unknown at the time, because he had no sponsor in legislature. That time, a grandfather, a father, an uncle, an aunt could be in legislature and submit their relative's name, and they would be accepted because they belonged to them, and they would be supervising them. Well, he had nobody in legislature, but he won, and I was always very proud of that, because I thought it was something for a 13-year-old kid to be able to do. I try to get on something in my mind where I can go forward and just try to forget the rest temporarily. I never forget anything forever, but I try to work it out, to have something that I can be part of. Well, they say it's not all genes, but my father died at 101. His brother died 1 month after he did, at age 100. And their sister died at 97. My grandfather, who was born in 1854, died at age 83. There's some longevity. My mother died at 94. There is longevity. And I guess I would say, if I have one goal, I hope to live to be 100. And my family thinks I will be.